Good afternoon and welcome to Williams Island TV. Today we have a treat. We all talk about Broadway, we all go to the theater, we see theater productions, and there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. I started my career in theater many, many years ago. But today we have the pleasure of meeting two young guys that are presently Tony Award winners. They've won 3, 4, 5, 6 Tonys. They have one of the greatest shows in New York running right now, Sunset Boulevard. They're producing the next show, Coming In by George Clooney. And today we're going to meet with them and you're going to hear what goes into producing a show, how they got started, and more importantly, what theater is all about, how they make money with it, how they find the artists, how they find the talent, and what does a producer really do to put on a Broadway show. And these two guys are amazing and you will have a blast with it. One is Olivier Roth, the other is David Manella. They have been producing. David is one of the top theatrical attorneys and top producers in New York, and Oliver the same. So be with us, and we're going to be back in just 2 minutes, and I think you're going to truly enjoy the show tonight. And good afternoon. Small world, and today is about a small world. As some of you may or may not know, I get my nails done every Saturday morning at the salon. And there's a woman that's there every Saturday as well. And I always used to listen to her on the phone, not because I was eavesdropping, but she was talking to her son, I assumed at that time, about Broadway, about what's going on, that she's going up to New York to the Tonys and all this stuff. And of course, my past has been theater and has been all of similar background, but a few years ago. And we got to talking, and it turns out her son is also involved in theater in New York. He's an attorney for a major law firm. His husband is also a producer in New York City as well. And turns out they've done some amazing shows. So we got to talking, and I said, I've got to meet them when I get to New York one day. And I'm up there all the time. And we finally did get to meet. We started discussing, and I went to see Sunset Boulevard, which is the show they currently have running on Broadway now. And I said, what a great idea. They're going to be down here for Thanksgiving. What a wonderful idea to have them come on, meet with them, and find out how a show is put together, how it starts, where the concept comes from, where the money comes from, and the influence mom has is why these guys are now where they are in the theater today. Smaller world is we have a resident that lives on the island, and his daughter is also an entertainment attorney, and she's partners with David Manella, who's you're going to meet in a minute, in the same law firm. So it's really 6 degrees of separation. We all get to meet each other. We all get to know each other, but this intrigued me because this is my background. I started in theater, I started in production, and I listened to these guys. It was like little me all over again just a few years later. So let me tell you a little about who we're going to meet. First, David Manella is an entertainment attorney at Loeb & Loeb. He works at the forefront of major deals that are shaping the entertainment and media industries. David brings an extensive background in theater production, including the MFA in theater management and producing from Columbia University. He's in law practice, which covers a wide spectrum of transactional work for film, TV, and live stage productions. And he's also the attorney for many Broadway shows running right now, as well as some of the people within the shows. And we'll get into that later. David's a Harvard graduate. He's in entertainment law. He's with a major firm. And his passion is not just theatrical law, but producing in theater itself. And we'll get into whether he's an actor as well. But that's a little bit about David, very briefly for the moment. Oliver is a Tony Award winner and Olivier Award winner, producer in O. Henry Productions, a New York-based production company, which he founded in 2014. His producing credits include Broadway Merrily We Roll Along, who he won a Tony for, Parade, Tony Award, The Inheritance, Tony Award, Sunset Boulevard, Good Night, and Good Luck. And that's the one I believe is opening very shortly, starring George Clooney, which he'll be producing. So I'm not going to go into all the honors, all of the accolades that these two have done, because we'll be here all day just listening to all of them. But it is really, truly a pleasure, because two young guys this successful in the entertainment industry is usually unheard of. It's hard enough to have one show, not only all of these. So let me introduce you to David and Oliver. Mom will introduce, we'll introduce you to your mom later.
Terrific.
But first and foremost, from your standpoint, I want to ask you separately, but both. How did you ever go from law school to entertainment law and then theatrical producing? Let's start with you first, because you both have probably similar backgrounds.
So I fell in love with theater as a kid, thanks to Mom. Obviously, I grew up in South Florida.
Wait, I got to stop you.
Yep.
You say thanks to Mom. What did Mom do to get you excited about theater?
So she would take me to New York twice a year. We'd see 4 to 5 shows every trip. I remember one particular trip. It was 2004. We saw Hairspray, Wicked, Mamma Mia, The Producers, Thoroughly Modern Millie, and the Rockettes. And I was
all in one set.
All in one stretch.
Great.
And I went to Harvard for undergrad, where I auditioned for all of the shows and learned that although they treated me well at Pinecrest and gave me some roles, I didn't have much of a talent for the stage. But I tried my hand at producing and fell in love with this activity that really felt that you were facilitating an art form that you love so much. And at the same time, I was a student of government. I debated I was on the debate team. I loved research, reading, writing, and law school, was always in my horizon. It made sense for me. But I found this very unique program at Columbia, which is a joint law degree and a Master of Fine Arts in theater producing. And it was through my discovery of this program that I realized that entertainment law was a potential pathway, and set out to be initially a theater lawyer. And now I practice a little more broadly than just live stage. But I went to law school with the very specific goal of landing a job in entertainment law. And
now, Harvard is not really known for that, is it?
No, so that was actually Columbia. So Harvard,
Columbia is, yes.
Harvard was undergrad, and what was great about Harvard is they didn't have as fulsome at the time a theater degree. You couldn't actually even major in theater.
Mm-hmm.
But the American Repertory Theater, which is one of the foremost regional theaters that develops a lot of shows for Broadway, was based at Harvard. It still is. So I got to study under producer Diane Borger and Tony Award-winning director Diane Paulus, and intern and be surrounded by shows like Finding Neverland and Waitress, all the way with Bryan Cranston, all these shows that were trying out for Broadway. And it gave me a real insight into how a show actually gets to New York.
Yeah.
So I was very, very lucky to have been there at the time when the theater was really burgeoning into the powerhouse it is now.
So that's how it all started.
Yep.
And Oliver?
It's funny. I've never heard David talk about Harvard being not a big play. He's right, but all of David's classmates are working on Broadway now. And I have a similar story, but it's at Johns Hopkins. So I'm from New York. I guess I'm from New York. Went to theater, growing up all my life. And at school there was a very tiny theater program, and I didn't even really partake in the program, but I did enough of it to realize that I liked producing when I eventually figured out that was even a job, which was after graduating. And the rest is history. I moved back to New York and have been working in the industry since I got since right out of college. Yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting. You look at how things happen and how people get where they are. And when I graduated, well, I originally was supposed to go to Juilliard for piano. And I made it there 3 months, and I said, I hate this. This is too classical. It's too structured. I want theater. I want the arts, whatever. And I went to the U of M. And I got involved with the Ring Theater down there. And of course, my nemesis, as brilliant as he was Jerry Herman. Because Jerry Herman was there a number of years before me, but with all the brilliance that he created and the shows and the Broadway he did. But it's at the U of M is where I decided theater was what I really wanted in music, not just piano. And I got involved with the theater there. And in fact, we wrote a show. I wrote the music for a show, On Your Way. It's become On the Way to the Forum with not my music, but we made a musical out of the original written by Plautus. But I knew from that point on, theater was what I wanted to do. Never thinking it all the years I went to school until I got there to this. So we all have our journeys, how you get there. But how did you go from, now you're in the real world, you're an attorney, you're in the entertainment world, you love theater. How'd you wind up getting your first show? What was the first show?
Well, so actually,
We met on the first show.
Oh, you did?
yeah.
So it's a very good
Interesting.
story.
Ah.
So when David was doing this MFA JD, he, as part of his studies, had an intern for a production company. And so he did an internship that then turned into a part-time job at CD Productions as the head of development. And I, at the same time, was back in New York and producing. And the first show I did, there was one other co-producer on it, which was CD Productions. And so we met in 2015 or so on that first project. I found that project really by having told everyone in Manhattan, I think, that I was looking for, I had been working in the industry for a few years.
All right, so let me interrupt. You say you were working in the industry.
Yeah.
What were you doing that said, okay, I want to produce a show? Because you were young at that age.
Yeah. I always knew I was interested in producing because I love business and I love I love business. And so
Right.
my sort of pathway, I summarized it earlier, but my pathway into producing is that I met a producer, and actually just coincidentally I met two producers in 1 week. It was the first time I'd ever met someone who was producing theater. And it was like it was like a light bulb moment where I realized I was right out of school. I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do. And I realized, oh, there's a whole, type field of work that is making the shows that I love so much operate from a business perspective, both developing great product from a creative side and then selling that product. And so I knew from day one that that's where I wanted to end up.
You want to be on the business end of it.
Yeah. And then and to do that, I took, I was a production assistant backstage on a Broadway show, getting tape ready to put on the floor and getting coffee. And then, for 3 or 4 years thereafter doing those kinds of jobs, I really let everyone know that where I wanted to end up is producing. And because of that, I was, a few productions had crossed my desk, and the one that I finally settled on making the first thing that I was involved with is the one that we met on.
Now, what were you doing on that show that you met?
So, well, it's an interesting story. There's the first show I was associated with and the first show I signed on to produce. So the show was called Invisible Thread. It was off Broadway at Second Stage Theater. And it was about someone who went to Uganda to help build an orphanage and realized that the political situation kind of surrounding this aid program was corrupt and much more complicated than he believed at the time. And I was interning for this company, Seaview, that was producing the show, co-producing the show alongside Oliver. And we loved the music in this show and said to the composer who wrote the show, what else do you have in your back pocket? You're clearly extraordinarily talented. And he said, for years I've been working on this musical called Lempicka, which is about Tamara de Lempicka, the woman who invented Art Deco. And she lived this fascinating life. She was born in Poland, emigrated to Russia, married a Russian aristocrat. They were expelled during the Bolshevik Revolution. She fled to Paris, where she really mastered her art. She fell in love with her female subjects and lived, as a woman with this out bisexual life with the mistress as the breadwinner, really a forerunner for her time. And she was half Jewish and had to flee Paris to the United States before World War II. So this very rich Les Mis type story.
Right.
And Oliver and I, having just met on this prior show, Invisible Thread, decided that we wanted to produce this show, Lempicka, together. And Lempicka had a 10-year history from when we signed on to it. It ended up making it to Broadway. It did not succeed on Broadway. But what was so interesting to me is it's the first project I signed on to, the first project we signed on together. It was the 9th show that I was involved with to actually be on Broadway or the West End of London, even though I signed on so much earlier, which shows for a brand new musical how long it actually takes to get these things to Broadway. Obviously, a pandemic didn't help. And though it was the biggest financial failure of any show I've been on, it's where I built a brand for myself as a producer. It's where I met a lot of my contacts that have, and our contacts that have brought us, other shows which have been highly successful. And it's where I found my husband. So it's actually of all the shows we've been a part of, the one that's nearest and dearest to me.
Well, it's probably been the most successful emotionally.
Correct.
Right. Exactly.
And it's a great reminder to me that success is not always defined by numbers.
Exactly.
But really what your experience is on a particular project.
Both of you obviously are young for the industry, let's say. How did the shows come to you? Because you really weren't a known commodity back when. You were going to law school, you're out of law school now, you're practicing law or getting ready to. How do people know to bring you a show, or how do you hear about them to get involved? Because if I'm not mistaken, I was reading something, you're partners with Judgment Theaters, or the guy, or he's involved some of the shows you've done.
We share a last name.
Wasn't there somebody? No, I thought, okay.
Well, we've done a number of shows in
his theaters, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say what I have found about the industry is that, just like I said about that first show, if you make it known, it's a strange industry in that there's theater all around the world, but the Broadway industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, is really like a 10-block radius in Manhattan, and that is where you can find 90% of the decision makers, and in the maybe even 100%. And so I found in those early days that by just making it known that I was looking for things, and then delivering when things came to me and I committed to them, that funds were raised, theaters were booked, the project happened, that very quickly word spreads. And I mean, I probably have gotten an email while you've been sitting here. There are at least, even on a holiday week, there's a half a dozen things that get sent to me. Now, that's everything from a script that someone's just starting out to sort of Broadway, something that has already booked a Broadway venue. But I find that because the industry is fairly small, at this point, and I'm not, I celebrated about a year ago the 10th anniversary of having born my company. So at that point, really, I think that the work
Comes to you.
comes to.
But we get involved at all different stages. So Lempicka was an example where we had deep admiration for a creative, and we said, what else do you have? And we're going to sign on at the very start of this journey. Sunset Boulevard, which we're currently producing on Broadway, it was the Tony Awards, and we were hanging out at an after party, and said to a group of producers in London who we're friends with, what do you have next? And they said, we're dreaming up this revival of Sunset Boulevard with this visionary director, Jamie Lloyd, and Nicole Scherzinger, who you may know from the Pussycat Dolls. And we said, this collection of names is so fascinating. We want to be a part of it. And we signed on before there ever was a production, first in London, and then it made its way to Broadway. Then there are shows that, as Oliver notes, already has booked a Broadway house. They're fully cast. They have producers that are looking to round out their producing team. And we might come on a month or two before the show even is opening. So all different stages of a life that we kind of join the process on.
Now, do you have offices in Manhattan, or you work out of your house wherever you might be? Because to today's world, I guess you don't need an office.
Yeah, I just gave up. Over the pandemic, I gave up my office. I actually think I might almost be ready to head off again, but mostly out of the house. Because we're in Manhattan anyway, so yeah. Wait.
I have my law office in Midtown East, but we operate our producing business out of the house.
How does your law firm feel about you involved with producing? Do they feel it's a conflict you get, or is it an advantage to them?
Yes. So, I'm very careful about what shows I sign on to and do a conflict, check on every show, and will never be involved as a producer on a show in which we're involved as a law firm. As a example, I'm the lawyer for Good Night and Good Luck. Play.
That's your show coming up.
Yeah. So I, even though Oliver's involved and normally we produce together, I am not getting involved in a producing or investing capacity, so that, my interests are fully directed towards and aligned with the, production council role on the show. But what we found is producing has been the way that I built a network in this industry.
I was going to say it's to your advantage.
How I find most of my clients is I meet other producers on shows and other writers, and creatives on shows, and it helped brand me as someone in the industry and build out a portfolio of individuals who, when they need a lawyer, think, oh, I met that guy David on this show. So
what's really interesting about the way David approaches this is that so much of what we do is legal, as producers, is legal, because each show is its own LLC, its own startup.
Oh yeah, cool.
So I spend 90% of the time it's David, but I spend all day on phone with some attorney or other, depending on which show, because it's all in setting a show up. It's rights agreements, it's vendor agreements, it's the license of the theater, and so investor agreements and filing. So there's a lot, I think, of overlap between the two.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because when I was producing, my first office was in the Palace Theater, and my office was on the 4th floor. Nederlander owned the theater. And I needed office space. And they said, well, we have this office upstairs. And it wasn't that big. It was a few rooms, nothing grandiose by any means. And I took the office. And one day I'm looking at the floor in my office, and it's a carpet. And it's dirty, it's old, it's ragged. Let me get rid of this thing. And I pull it to the side, and it's a glass floor. And it was over the stage of the Palace Theater.
Wow.
And as it turned out, I say this because it was Edward Albee's offices. And he could watch the rehearsal, and they never knew how he knew what was going on. And he had a little private elevator that would go downstairs to the stage floor. And then he'd say, well, you didn't do this, and you didn't do this, and you did this. But it was very fascinating. But later on, when I started getting involved with shows, and not as a main producer by any means, I went to a couple of the meetings, the marketing meetings, let's call them. And I watched how every seat had a price. And I was fascinated that there's such detail to pricing of these shows. I mean, this seat is $18 and this is $42 and this seat because there's a poll. And they literally, I guess it was a stage manager or somebody that works with the producers. And it was amazing how they then determined the financial ability and capability of the show based in that theater and based on the seating locations.
Yeah. So David's an attorney and a producer. I'm a revenue manager.
Okay, so that you would know.
And it's similar, right? I do a lot of the shows that we produce, but I also do other shows just like he is an attorney for other shows. And especially now, that has become a huge part of the live entertainment space in general.
I would imagine so.
Right, but the first show that really analyzed seats like that was The Producers. And then from there, it's built into a very robust practice where, we're looking at, different days of the week, different areas of the house, much like the airline industry and hotels do, the concert industry. This week we're taping this on Thanksgiving week. A lot of tourists in New York. probably not going to get as good of a deal as if, you happen to be in New York second week of February when, there's not as much tourism. You just, get a good deal going to the theater. And so all those things are analyzed to maximize revenue.
It's interesting because I know if you go to New York, the last minute you can get a ticket, the last minute you can't get a ticket. It's this price, it's that price, it's 2 for 1. There's a myriad of. Weren't you involved with? I guess who was it? It was Ticketmaster at one point. You were involved, I think.
Yeah, I worked with Ticketmaster.
And it must have been a fascinating thing to determine pricing. But what I want to go into is because what people don't know is what really does a producer do. You hear the word producer all the time, and you say, okay, big deal. So he's a producer, but all people know who the star of the show is, but that's all they know. And I always use the example because I was involved with it that when in business, it should be like the opening night of a Broadway show. You sit, you enjoy the show. You shouldn't have to think about what went on to make it happen. You just want to enjoy that show. What does go on? How do you get? Let's use Sunset Boulevard because I want to talk about it because I just saw it and it's totally amazing, but totally not what you expect.
Yeah.
How do you take an idea like that? And the director must have had a brilliance of ideas to come up with the thought process of doing what they did. How does that all come about?
Yeah.
What is a producer's involvement with all that?
I'll start with the general question and then we can zero
Yeah,
out.
please.
So I always say, except for a few kinds of producers on a stage show, the one thing that all producers of the show have in common is that they have some financial stake in the show, whether that be investing it themselves, being responsible for bringing on investment, but almost 100% of producers of any given show have some financial responsibilities. From there are some producers that is their, there's some shows of ours and some producers on shows where that's the sort of sole commitment. And there are others that, and then it sort of, goes from that to being sort of passively involved, attending a marketing meeting, giving ideas all the way through, to, in the case for David, it's a little harder because of the conflict of interest, interesting. But for me, it might be that I've been involved in the financing and I'm also doing the ticketing and revenue management. When you go all the, and the sort of first producer, the lead producer, the general partner of the production entity, they're like a chairman of the board. So every department, I always say a producer, I would describe as a jack of all trades and a master of like one or two. In order to be a producer, you need to understand, you need to have sort of a way in. So for some producers, that's creative, where they're really great at talking to writers, directors, and being involved in the creative process. They're also responsible for the funding, and they have to look over the marketing, right? So they know a little bit of it. For others, it might be that they're not they understand enough about the creative process to talk to the director or the playwright, but they really are great at marketing, right? Or so every, in my experience, every producer has their, one specialty, but really they're just like the chairman of the board. They have to oversee everything.
But they do have to be a visionary.
Yes.
They have to look at an idea and say, okay, I think this put into a certain context would be amazing. And then they still have to have the ability to put the pieces, initial pieces together, whether it's book, the lyrics, the writing, the play, the script, and even in some cases, the star.
Yeah. So in the case of Sunset Boulevard, as for us, we have partners in London who we've been working with a lot since about 2019, whether New York-based production or London-based production. And we've struck up a great partnership with them. And so when they were doing, I think David mentioned, we were talking about what they had coming up. They mentioned Sunset Boulevard.
Now, had that's opened yet in London?
Not open yet. It was no, not open yet. They were just putting it together, doing the.
But they knew who was going to star.
They knew. Yeah,
Nicole.
They knew that Nicole Scherzinger was going to star, and they knew that Jamie Lloyd was going to be directing it. And
I'm going to pause you there because Jamie Lloyd, I think as director is one of the linchpins of this production and what got us very interested. So Jamie Lloyd is more of an avant-garde director, though he's had big commercial shows on Broadway in the West End of London. And he's known for stark minimalism. So, you think of Sunset Boulevard and you think of the Glenn Close production
Right.
when it was originated on Broadway.
Grandiose.
And it's grandiose. It was a massive spectacle. They built Norma Desmond's mansion on stage. And it's Glenn Close's performance and it's the set that people talk about from that production. The production that we're involved with effectively has no set. It is a screen on stage and a lot of lighting and a lot of smoke.
Yeah.
And what Jamie Lloyd does, whether it's Sunset Boulevard or any of his other productions, is he distills the text down to its core ideas and uses minimalism to elevate those core tenets of a text or of a show. And here, I believe he was very interested in, the visions, the nostalgia, and visions of the past and delusions that the character of Norma Desmond had in her mind, and wanted to bring all of that to the fore through the use of live camera work that projects her face onto the stage, as she's remembering her life as a grandiose silent film star. The access that he has to the psychology of this character through the use of the camera work and the screens on stage is just extraordinary.
Well, to go along with that, and I'll give you the perfect.
Yeah.
When I saw the show, and I had no idea what to expect, and I'd seen it with Glenn Close, and it was one of my favorite shows. But the things that stand out about the original was the sets, the grandiose, the opulent home she lived in, all of this above. I found, though, for about the first 10, 15 minutes of the show, when she's describing or they're trying to describe, other than the stack of papers,
Yeah.
you really, I'm just wondering how they're going to get through this mansion
Yep.
with nothing on the stage. But as it went on, and as you get into the second act, what I found is I stopped looking for the sets. I stopped looking for the costumes. I stopped looking for the grandiose. I was getting very into the character to the point where anything would have disturbed me from that, because I was really more intent between the music and the orchestra, which obviously must have been, added more instruments than normal. But I found myself to the point where I was so into it, it was drawing me into the character more so than if there was distractions around it. And I think the director accomplished that.
I agree. And what's so, she's living in this mansion, but it's actually a decrepit mansion.
Yeah, of course.
And what's so important to that story is not the actual surroundings of this character, but what is in the character's head and the grandiose visions that this character has for herself. And by stripping the stage of all of the excess and focusing just on the character on the stage, you really start to understand what's happening in her mind, which fuels the narrative of the story.
So the question would be, you're sitting back in an office, you're a producer, you have the rights to the show, you know what it was like when and all of a sudden Jamie Lloyd comes along and gives you this minimalistic thought process of how he's going to do the show. And you as the producer have to say, this guy's nuts or this is brilliant. So I'll say, how did that, that is a major break from the norm of what that theater was like originally.
I had seen 3 Jamie Lloyd productions previously, I think. And I'll say, I don't know if it was Jamie or the interviewer, but I recently saw an interview where either he or the interviewer described it as maximalist minimalism, because, the lighting and video and sound rigs are some of the most advanced in any Broadway theater. But to your point, they're all so deliberate that at some point it just becomes what's on stage. And I think I'd seen his Cerdà de Bergerac, I'd seen his Betrayal, and I'd seen his A Doll's House, which actually I was a co-producer on the season prior. And I love the play Betrayal, but in the case of the other two, Cyrano and A Doll's House, it was plays that I remember studying in high school and not really loving. I don't think I ever turned to those texts since high school, despite ending up in theater. And sitting through as an audience member of those productions and just getting enraptured, just as you're describing, just becoming totally sucked in. And so I mentioned this is Sunset started in London with colleagues of ours who produce in London.
And we have to give them the credit for putting that initial stamp of approval on
I was
Jamie
going to say,
Lloyd's
somebody
vision.
had a lot of guts
Yeah.
to do it.
Then they brought it to us, and we said anything we can do to be a part of this.
But it was, I remember when they brought it to me, I said, this fits the bill of all the things that he's done previously that I loved. And so we said yes. And, in that, I did not like Sunset Boulevard when I first saw it. But I trusted them, the producers that brought it to us, and I trusted the aesthetic that I'd seen of Jamie Lloyd, the directors previously, to say, you know what, I think this is a good venture.
Now, let me ask you, how much say did Andrew Lloyd Webber have in all of the artistic of this? Because normally he has pretty good control, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't know this firsthand, but I know from what the creative team has talked about, that it was a very collaborative process. They added some new underscoring. He reorchestrated some things to fit the aesthetic, the vision of this. So
On that point, Andrew has been very supportive of radical reimaginations of his work. Just this summer in New York, we had nothing to do with it, but there was this brilliant production of Cats that took place at a drag ball. And the cats were not actual cats. They were, ballroom performers, in using ballroom in the 1980s, Madonna, Vogue sense of the word, performing these hyper characterizations that are described in the songs about the cats. And it was a massive success in New York, and I wouldn't be surprised if it has future life. Jamie Lloyd did a production of Evita that I didn't get to see, but my understanding of the context for it was set in like a Coachella-like music festival. And Evita was this headliner who developed this big following. I know there was another, more contemporary staging of Jesus Christ Superstar recently.
Yes.
So Andrew, who has this unbelievable oeuvre, has been really open to letting more avant-garde directors play with the work. And I think his openness has led to really astounding results.
Which is a real testament to him, because I have gone after the rights of works of other renowned playwrights, and a lot of them, especially if you have a very, very big title like a Sunset Boulevard or a Cats, a lot of authors will say you can do it, but you have to do it exactly the way that it was originally intended. And yeah, you're right. It seems that Andrew, and also if you just look at the things he's writing, I mean, like the stuff, this sort of golden age musicals that he wrote are I guess those post golden age,
The 1980s mega musicals.
There's nothing like a School of Rock or Bad Cinderella, or there was an announcement recently on something he's right. I mean,
The Illusionist, yeah.
I think unlike other composers of his generation, he's adapted to the times in like
Well, because if you compare, let's say you look at the Phantom set and the opulence of it, and then you look at the minimalistic of this, it's like two different worlds. It's almost like two different people thought of this.
Yeah.
So now you do the show, it opens. Before you get to opening night, obviously critics have so much to do, unfortunately, with some great shows. I'm involved with Back to the Future, and unfortunately the Times didn't like it. Everyone else did, but it made no difference. It's closing in January. It's just the life of theater. I read the review of the Times, and I cannot for the life of me tell you if it was good or bad, because I have no idea what that review said. The only thing I could find a little bit about was that he was great at the set designer. Had done other things, and he should have done other things, and there was something to that effect. But how do you overcome all this?
That was an interesting review.
It was.
Jesse Green for the New York Times praised a lot of the elements, the performances, the directorial vision, but effectively said, I don't like Sunset Boulevard, and I never will.
No.
And I think a lot of readers didn't give much credence to that review because the personal bias was so, I mean, he was outward with it. And I think for Sunset Boulevard, the other reviews were so
they were great.
euphoric.
Great.
And the kinds of quotes that shows only get once in a blue moon, like this is the show of the season, this is a performance of a lifetime, that it was able to overcome a more mixed review from the Times.
Yeah, I think that's right. I also just, I mean, more generally, I think we're entering an era where the reviews aren't aren't the makers or breakers of shows anymore, because that's just the way like is.
Yeah, I mean,
Wicked.
I mean,
Is it Wicked a perfect example?
Wicked got awful reviews when
and
it
it's
first
still
opened.
running.
It's to the point where I guess I say this privately. I don't know if I've ever said it publicly before, but I don't even if my job on a show doesn't have to do in doing something with the reviews, I just don't bother to read them. Not because I don't want to read something bad, just because I got so much else to do with my life. Someone else can read the review.
With Sunset Boulevard as well, I think it's such a unique experience seeing that show.
Very.
That word of mouth going in was quite tremendous, and we had a good sense of that. That I think there was a confidence on opening night that regardless of what the reviews are, we know audiences are
Well, I'll
receiving
tell you,
this
the
really
night I
warmly.
saw it was opening night.
Yeah.
But the audience reaction was what I was impressed with. They just were so into it and cheering and applauding and standing and
Yeah,
that
there
was
are
what
multiple
was,
standing ovations a
Yes.
night. It's
Yeah.
wild.
my you actually just reminded me, my confidence in this production. I mean, seeing it is an undeniable production, but really was after opening in London, sitting back at my desk in New York, and like clockwork, I would get 1 to 2, midday in New York, post show, post curtain, and in London, I'd get a text from, like usually a New York colleague that I didn't even know was in London. Just saw Sunset Boulevard, so I saw you're attached to it. Oh my God, it's so incredible, and I like clockwork. It would happen a few times a week. And that's when I sort of said, okay, I know I think it's great, but this is something that if people are, flipping through the program to find that I'm involved and texting me while they're on, while they're away in London, this is something special.
So a show like that, I'm guessing, costs somewhere in the $20 million range, something like that in the New York, 25, 26.
The average revival of a musical probably costs, this is not based on me actually adding up capitalizations and creating a firm average, but I would say a revival costs somewhere between $7 to $15 million. Sunset Boulevard's a revival, and what's different there is you don't have to develop the show, it already exists. New musicals are now costing between $20 to $35 million. They're very expensive.
So you have a great idea, you have a thought process, you have great thoughts for who's going to star in it, director, whatever. Now you got to go out and raise $20 million.
The way your investment in the theatrical production works generally is that whatever you've invested in a previous production, you get that percent of the next one. So because we said yes to the production in London, we were able to keep our share of Broadway, which was obviously less than $20 million. Our share, which was I think $20 million. Fundraising on Broadway has become more challenging because the business has, like most businesses post-COVID, it's just not as rampantly successful. But there are a lot of people that support, and there's a lot of people also that make, there's a lot of productions that make great money for people.
There are different kinds of risk portfolios on Broadway, which is, I think, something an investor, a prospective investor who's looking at Broadway generally doesn't always realize.
Yeah.
You have your big original musicals that, as I know, cost $20 to $35 million to produce.
Right.
And for that to work and recoup its cost and then turn a profit, it has to run for more than 1 year.
Yes.
And the goal of those shows is to become a Wicked or a Dear Evan Hansen or a Come From Away, Phantom of the Opera, and run for years and years and return more than 2 times your investment. Wicked, I think, has grossed over $6 or $7 billion worldwide over the course of its run to date. So that that's where there's this line: you can't make a living on Broadway, but you can make a killing. Those are your killings.
Yes, but there's not a lot of those.
There aren't a lot, and they're currently, it feels like there's only 1 or 2 new musicals per season that even
Come close.
recoup its cost and stay on Broadway for more than a year. There's another kind of show, and Lempicka excluded, is the kind of show that our portfolio is more filled with, and those are limited runs, either revivals of pre-existing shows or stage plays as opposed to musicals, usually featuring a celebrity. And the costs are a bit lower than putting a brand new original musical on stage. And the goal is not to run for even a year. Sometimes it's only a handful of weeks. And that given the celebrity, you're going to have some level of a built-in audience. And the hope is that built-in audience creates some demand. Reviews and word of mouth create even more demand. And within, anywhere from 10 to 25 weeks, you can make, anywhere from 100% to 150% return on your investments. So you're not looking to become the next Wicked, but you're going in with a little less risk, hoping to have some fun and get a return that maybe beats the stock market.
But these limited runs are tougher, though, because there's no room for a mistake or a blip.
Not unlike the rest of the entertainment and media landscape right now. Because of that, it takes a title that people recognize,
Yes.
a star. Because you're right, if you don't hit the ground running on week 1, it's you don't have an extended time to make up any losses that occurred.
Right. We're involved now with the production of Romeo and Juliet, and it stars Kit Connor and Rachel Ziegler, who are 2 massive Gen Z stars. And there's original music for the show written by Jack Antonoff, who is primary songwriter and producer for Taylor Swift. And when these tickets went on sale, it just reached the targeted audience quite nicely. And I think the title as well, perhaps the most well-known play, but one that younger high school students study and feel an affinity towards, filled with this talent that they also have this fandom around, made for a show that could do around or over $1 million a week in grosses from week 1. And that's one that I think fit that limited run model very, very well.
I describe it as me running a sprint versus running a marathon. Great. Is a sprint easier than a marathon? Oh, sorry. Is a marathon easier? No, but if you have a bad mile, right, it's not going to totally ruin your marathon time. On a sprint, you have a guy.
That's what I'm saying. You're done.
Right. So, but that doesn't mean the sprint is harder than the marathon. They're both just different sports.
Well, it's interesting because I'm involved with a group, the Steve Baruch group, and I've been involved with about 8 or 10 of their shows. And the shows that I thought would have been, we did one with Uma Thurman and whatever. We did Angels of Den and Demon. I would have thought they would have been, you have the great names in these shows. They would have been big hits. And I'm also involved with Come From Away, who turned out to be the sleeper of the shows and the only one that I got recouped all my money from. So you really never know which show is going to make it. And you think the name would help, this would help. And then a show comes along, that great idea, I loved it. But I never thought it was going to be the one of all of them that did well.
It's hard to pick on. I mean, that's a lot of what I do, is because my investment portfolio of shows is all these titles we've talked about that we have investments in, and then I also will invest in other shows that I'm not a co-producer or producer of, and a lot of what I do is try to figure that out, and it's not easy.
But it's interesting, as having a star alone doesn't just make it a success. Either the star has to be given an undeniable performance, which is what's happening with Nicole Scherzinger in Sunset
Yes, she's
Boulevard,
amazing. Absolutely amazing.
or the star has to be the right time for that star. So Romeo and Juliet, you have Kit Connor, who's coming off of season 3 of Heartstopper, which is this massively successful show for young audiences on Netflix. You have Rachel Ziegler, who's just about to star in the live action Snow White. And you have Jack Antonoff, who wrote music, who's coming off all the attention on him through Taylor Swift with the Eras Tour. So it was just the right time where these stars were in the zeitgeist that their collaboration hit.
You were involved with Funny Girl, correct?
Yes.
The revival. And I wonder, you look at who did ultimately perform in it, and she was brilliant. But originally, the original star they put in there was so wrong for the part. And what I don't understand is you have some of the greatest minds in theater putting a show together. And then you have this girl out there who could do it with her eyes closed. And yet that's not who was there. And the person that was there, and I felt bad because she's a great talent, but not for this part. What goes through that producer's mind or director's mind that they bring in somebody that's so wrong for it, vocally, especially knowing that a Streisand did it originally?
Yeah, I mean, so Funny Girl, I was just involved with raising a very small portion of the financing. So I didn't have any insight into kind of the backstage politics on that one. But I know, for the initial casting, I think what I read kind of the producers talk about was you can't match Barbra Streisand, so just go in a completely different direction. And they initially cast the role with someone who is kind of a comedian first,
Right.
and almost
Right.
was really true actually to the character of Fanny Bryce. Fanny Bryce was this Jewish vaudeville performer who didn't fit the bill for what a Follies girl looked or sounded like at the time.
Yep.
And blasted to success from her very unique acting and comedic skills. And that role was initially cast with someone who was regarded as this very unique comedic talent who had a performance voice, and was regarded for a number of film roles as being this really unique kind of character actress. And I think there was a thought that, let's go back to the basics of
Go back
Fanny
to what the
Bryce.
show's all about. The Tonys are coming up soon, obviously. And favorite time of year. And Mom can't wait, by the way. She's
It's her
ready to
favorite
she's
time.
ready to go to New York. I know.
At Black Friday, she's already looking for a dress.
I'm sure she's already got the dress. She's not looking anymore. But you're running up against, obviously, a hit show. No question about it, with Audra McDonald in it. It must be heartbreaking in a way that you have the star, you have the success, you have the show, and yet literally across the street is your competition.
I think it makes it more fun. What's a Tony's if there's a single front runner and they're going to win no matter what?
By the way, the show across the street is Gypsy.
Gypsy, which I haven't seen yet. I'm going December 14th. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I've actually never seen a professional production of Gypsy.
Oh, okay.
I've never seen any action of Gypsy.
To get to have my first rose be Audra McDonald, I mean, how thrilling. And obviously, I mean, we don't know where there's a revival of Floyd Collins that could be, that's very interesting, a revival of the last 5 years. I think a lot of the chatter is kind of that revival race is going to come down to Gypsy and Sunset
No
Boulevard.
question about it. There's no question. That's what that is the race.
and
That is the Tonys.
I think it's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I think last season where we didn't really have we had there was a few nominations, but I felt not I felt like I didn't have a horse in the race as much, even though I had a few. But I thought last season's Tonys, from at least an industry person's perspective, was the most thrilling since I started in the business, because it was every award was unexpected.
It was.
And every year that I've, since I've started attending Tonys or watching it as an industry, I'd waited for that. Because that's what makes it exciting
This has to
well, I think, it is, because all that means is that there is many great performances, productions happening on Broadway at the same time. If there's no competition, that tells you something about the quality, the fact that there's only one clear favorite that industry and fans are flocking to. And so I'm excited by it. I also think, and I haven't seen I know nothing about this production of Gypsy, but I think what's really interesting is having two productions of musicals. Were they written around the same time? I had no idea. Yeah, I know nothing about old school musicals. But my understanding is that Gypsy is a much more traditional production.
It is. No question
and I
about
think I think it's I heard it was one of the producers of Gypsy or something say on a panel recently how great it is that they're both in the same street, and how great it would be for people who are maybe experiencing Broadway for the same time to see one night and one the other, or one in a matinee, one in the evening, because that's what's so special about this art form is that just like I think I mentioned that my attraction to this working on Sunset was that I'd seen other works by this director of texts that I didn't relate to. Gypsy sounds like it's going to be in stark contrast with Sunset in terms of the way in which that team.
Well, they're two different shows.
Yeah,
totally. And I will tell you, to your point, my son saw both shows the same day. He saw Sunset for matinee, and he saw that at night. And he said, and he goes to everything. Yeah, it was the greatest day of theater he's ever had in his life.
I mean,
seeing those two shows.
And I'll say, we can. You can anyone who has a horse in the race come Tony's time can get competitive, but I think for us, I'm a theater lawyer, probably have every show on Broadway there's a client involved or associated with. Oliver's a revenue manager. We then produce any season. I think this season between off Broadway, London, New York, we have about 6 or 7 shows going on. So when push comes to shove, there are going to be Tony years that are successful for us, Tony years that are unsuccessful. The most important thing to us is the health of the industry as a whole. And if there's, competitive race and a lot of good horses, that just means that all boats are rising and there's a lot of attention and focus on the industry.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And that's where, we care about the art form and the livelihood of the art form. And we need supportive audiences. We need producers who aren't us taking risks on other shows. So to see those, the waters rise together in any given season is just heartwarming.
Well, and to that point, I mean, I'm involved with a club in New York, 54 Below, and I'll probably never see a dime out of it. It's okay. But it is amazing to me, and I don't say it because I'm promoting the club, it's that it's all pretty much Broadway. It's theater people that either aren't working at the time or doing shows or reviews or whatever. It is amazing how much talent there is. And the competition for talent to get into a show and be part of it, whether it's a chorus or a starring role. But these kids are brilliant in their own right, each and every one of them. And we see these acts come along, and you've been there, you see it. And you say, look at what they're competing against. But they all love it. They're all in that small community of talent. And it's it's really what Broadway is. So one last question I have, because you have a show coming up. So it's in the earlier stages, the George Clooney show. What's happened? Now, that was I believe there was a movie first.
Yeah,
he wrote a movie.
It was in 2005, a film called Good Night and Good Luck.
Right.
It's a great movie. It's him, Robert Downey Jr., Jack Daniels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's it. He adapted into a play.
Did Clooney write it?
Yeah, Clooney's a co-writer.
Okay.
Of it. And he'll be starring in it. And it's obviously they're not in rehearsals or performances yet, so I haven't seen any of his performance. But what's very cool is he's playing a different role. It's been a number of years, so he's playing a different role in the same piece that he did the movie of 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It should be really great. I think it'll be really good. The director of it, David Cromer, is someone who I've been working with a lot recently, who did The Band's Visit, and just choose one of the greatest directors working in New York. And I'm really excited to see between Clooney's, creative involvement and obviously he's like Hollywood, royalty, and then and David, who's comes out of the Chicago theater scene, so he's a very
now this is a limited run though, isn't it?
Yeah, limited run. How many weeks is it? 12 and 99 performances, right? 99
Now, what are the
performances.
chances a show like that does well?
So this is, going back to the sprint and the what I like about a limited run like that is, well, there's two things I like about it. One is that it's very obvious what success is. It's a simple algebra equation. This is how much we're spending on the show. This is this is how many performances we're running. Okay, what do we have to be making on each performance in order to profit? On a long running open-ended musical, you can't really do that math, because as long as you're making $1 on any given week, you have enough. You can run for another week, and so it's harder to say I need to do exactly this or that. Especially from an investment perspective, to say whether that that strategy makes sense. Um, Also, having done concert ticketing for a while at Lighters and Ticketmaster, one thing I learned doing that right at, as we came out of the pandemic is that industry is doing insane business right now, the concert industry, and what I realized is that the reason is because you've got these massive acts, and they go into a city for 1-2 nights, and their fan base,
No, it's
their fan base is
the money is
humongous,
insane. The money is insane.
and it's all about scarcity, right? And so what I like also, especially in this post-COVID world where we still aren't at the number of audiences that come to see a Broadway show in a year that we saw in 2019. So our volume is still down. 99 performances only means that if you are trying to get a ticket to the 100th performance, you're out of luck.
Right.
And so I think that I have a renewed sort of appreciation for these limited runs from a ticketing perspective and an investment perspective. And so, what's amazing about George Clooney is, again, he's like one of the biggest names of Hollywood history, and you've got him making his debut on a Broadway stage, and it's, I think, going to be an amazing theatrical event. So I like that it is limited.
We could go on and on and on, obviously. Would you, you're two young guys, somebody wants to go in this business, would you recommend it?
Oh, yeah.
You would.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so much joy and heart and experimentation and risk-taking. It's just a thrilling industry to be a part of. And it's also a beautiful community to be a part of. As Oliver notes, as you note, it's a tough business.
It is.
Which means if you're doing it because you love it.
Yeah.
And to spend your day-to-day surrounded by people who love what they do and who are like-minded in their interests is so joyful.
I imagine if you look at a show like Chorus Line, obviously it goes back, but it was a brilliant show. It's so true. It really is. It does, put together what really theater is all about. The love, the desire, the pain, the anguish, it's all there. And that's what this is. And they were those that just are happy being in the chorus. They just want to be on that stage.
Yeah.
They don't care about anything else. They just want to be part of that Broadway community.
I mean, during the pandemic, we got a truly renewed appreciation for the value of standbys and understudies and ensembles. They're the engine.
Oh,
that
they were
keep
doing
the
all
industry.
kinds of stuff on
Yeah.
YouTube.
So yeah. It's it's a really amazing supportive community. And so any part of it, I would recommend being a part of any.
Well, I can't thank you guys enough. You look, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. And I don't think people realize at your age, look what you've done. Look at the shows you're involved with. I will tell you, and I'm not bragging about it for your sake. I'm sincerely saying people should not miss Sunset Boulevard, because it is a unique theater experience that they will not have a chance to see again. It's an amazing, amazing show. It's a film. I mean, they roll the credits, and the opening of the second act is brilliant. It must be pretty cold out there to do that some nights.
It just there was just a New York Times article about it, I think, in last week. That's a great read.
Takes 63 individuals to make that moment happen every night.
Really?
It's a great show. I mean, I have been saying the reason I'm most excited that it's in New York is because when it was in London, I couldn't see it
Every night.
every night. And I just all I want to do is I go one night and I'm like, should I cancel my plans tomorrow night and try to see it again, because that's really
So somebody asked me, are they actually singing when they're out there? Or is it lip sync?
it's
They
a
are- it's live.
jam.
It is live.
Sound has gone out. It's in his ears before, so he's had to.
It does exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me that, and it was, I said, no, I think it's real.
It's amazing work.
It is.
It's I mean it's just a feat. It's so impressive.
And for those that haven't seen the show, the second act opens on the streets of New York, and then they wind up back in the theater. That's what's so amazing about it.
Yeah, it's an incredible achievement that people way smarter than either of us to figure out how to do.
I tell you,
So
to
like,
me,
I still have a problem getting my Zoom to work. So
I can't. To me, I look at a show like that and I say, what genius of a mind thought of some of these things? And that's what impresses me the most about it. But anyway, I can't thank you enough for being here.
Oh, what
we
a
hope
joy.
to do it again.
Yes.
I'm sure we'll see you anyhow because Mom will make sure of that.
Yes, absolutely.
And please go to the Tonys because you got to take Mom. She's got a new dress already. She's ready to go. She's there for you.
Well,
And,
fingers crossed we get the nominations and we have an excuse
I'm
to
sure
bring
you'll
Mom.
get the nomination. But thank you so much, both of you, for being
Thank
with
you.
us. And thank you. And only good luck.
Thank you.
Only good luck. And we'll be right back. We're back. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I didn't disappoint you. These two young men are amazing. Don't miss these shows they produce, but more importantly, I hope you truly enjoyed what we did. I am so impressed to see young talent like this accomplish so much at such a young age. It shows you that if you have a dream, you can fulfill it. And I thank you for watching. Watch for the next one we have coming up. The next one we will be doing will be a complete update on the new board of directors, on what's going on the island, an update on the opening of the new clubhouse and pool area. So for now, have a wonderful, safe holiday. Enjoy Thanksgiving, and only the best for all you and your family. Much love.